What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best off meta builds in your world aeternum that are very not popular but super powerful in PvE and PvP. As I will cover a lot of builds, so not to spend too much time, for each setup I will give you a quick overview of its playstyle. Then as well I will explain the best skill tree setup, then what gear should you wear, then even how many attributes should you allocate for each stat and much more. So moving over to the first build, which is the lifestaff and the rapier. This setup is a very mobile healer build with main focus on healing and having the option to survive multiple enemies at once. The rapier weapon is one of the best options for a healer, as it offers defenses and mobility with a lot of abilities to help escape enemies or reposition. If you're looking for a strong PvP and PvE build that uses the rapier and is pretty unkillable in 1v1s and small scale PvP, then here it is. So taking a closer look at the setup, and for the weight we have two options, to either way go with light or medium category. Both of the choices are really good, it just depends on what playstyle you prefer more. So going with light and having extreme mobility, or going with medium and sacrificing that a bit for more defense. I personally will take medium, but this won't really impact the performance if you choose either option. Next we have attributes, and we want to go with 25 strength, then from 400 to 450 focus and 200 constitution. In this build our primary weapon is the lifestaff and healing, so we will focus most of our stats on that, while for the rapier we will use the Ember Arboreal gem to convert its damage to scale also from the focus. And mostly we will use the rapier for mobility, defense and high IQ plays, while then the lifestaff will be for everything else. And then finally we have the skill tree, and this is how it should look like for the lifestaff. So our main abilities are structured around some of the best AoE healing spells, so we can use this setup for every single content. And then again, this is how it should look like for the rapier. So then on the other hand, for the rapier, we went with the best defenses and mobility tools in the game, as the rapier is mainly a secondary weapon to assist and help the lifestaff to survive and outplay the enemy. If you're interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. And overall, if you're looking for super fun and one of the best healer builds in the game, then here it is. And then for the last and final one, we have the Great Axe with the Fire Staff. This is a very unique and off-meta build, in the sense that we are a melee mage caster that depending on the fight will do both, so go into melee and long range. This setup has an amazing mobility from both of the weapons, while also having strong fire burn effects. So let's take a look at our setup. For our weight category, we will go with the light armor, as this build is primarily meant for range and maximum amount of damage. So especially for PvP, we will be kiting and catching low enemy players off guard. And then on top of that, for our weapon to scale with intelligence, on the Great Axe we will use the Abyssal gem to make this weapon convert from the strength to intelligence. And then finally, let's go over to the skill tree, and this is how it should look like for the Fire Staff. So our skills are built around one of the best mobility skills in the game, while also getting strong and quick fire spells that not only do damage, but apply the burning effect on multiple targets as well. And then again, this is how it should look like for the Great Axe. So this setup is primarily structured around once more increasing our mobility, while also using two CC tools that will help us to catch and make the enemy players out of position. Overall, if you're looking for a very fun off-meta build, but which is very strong and fun, then here you go. Next we have Rapier with the Ice Gauntlet. This weapon combination is one of the most powerful builds in the game, specifically for PvE, as by using the Rapier's flourish and finish skills, we will stack incredible amount of bleeds and deal massive amounts of damage. Also, as we can use evade to cancel the animations or Taundo spell, so we will increase our DPS even further by using the evade perks. And then on top of this, the Ice Gauntlet is your backup weapon that increases your damage over time in both single target and AoV fights. Also, the Ice Storm will greatly improve the AoV damage of this build and help you to provide passive DPS in single target fights and much more. So let's take a look at our setup. And for the weight we can again choose between medium or light, as both of them are similar and won't really impact the performance. For this specific build I prefer the light armor, as I'm trying to deal huge amount of damage from close and long range, so having high mobility and quick bursts of damage is my main playstyle, where these weapons will shine. And then for attributes we want to get 200 dexterity, then around 350 intelligence, and also 100 constitution. I personally think that having 100 con and by using rapier itself is plenty enough of defense. But of course you can go even more extreme and sacrifice all of the constitution, but for the average player I don't recommend it. And then lastly we have the skill tree setup. And this is how it should look like for the rapier. So as I mentioned previously, we will stack as much bleed and damage over time as possible. So then our second weapon will increase our AoV and CC even further. And then again, this is how it should look like for the ice gauntlet. So as we went full DPS for the rapier, so here I switched one DPS skill for one defensive skill. But besides that, we again went full DPS with extremely strong CC skills that will stun and destroy any enemy that crosses our path. If you are interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. And overall, if you're looking for a bit of an old school build which been the meta for many years now, then here it is. Next up we have the sword and shield with the void gauntlet. This is a very off-meta build which solely focuses on the void gauntlet to act as a support damage role that provides great group utility and self-sustain. The damage from the void gauntlet is lackluster compared to other PvE builds, but this can be a fantastic option for tanks that are looking to play as the 4 DPS, or just quickly fill into a DPS role when required. This setup can also be played in PvP, but mainly is structured around using in PvE. And then on the other hand, we will switch to the sword and shield to withstand the enemy damage, use our crowd control on the targets and just overall control the battlefield. So in short, this is a very powerful tank support build. And now let's take a look at the setup, and for our weight we are again going with the heavy armor, as in my opinion almost all sword and shield builds should always go full heavy, unless you are trying to be a melee bruiser, but for that you need super high endgame gear and skill to be in close range, while not having the greatest survivability options at your disposal. Then as far as attributes, we want to get from 300 to 350 strength, then 100 intelligence, then also 25 focus, and finally 200 constitution. These stats are adjusted to decrease our cooldowns, increase our sword and shield damage, and just overall give us good damage, while not sacrificing our amazing survivability at the same time. Next we have our skill trees, and this is how it should look like for the void gauntlet. So this setup is mainly built around being a good support, so that means buffing your teammates' damage, holding the enemy's aggro, doing big CC and at the same time having self-sustain. And then again, this is how it should look like for the sword and shield. So this setup is meant to give you a great mobility, so you can keep up with your teammates, while at the same time doing good damage and contributing to your team damage and buffs. If you are interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. Overall, if you're looking for an off-meta tank build which is very powerful, but not that popular in the current meta because of how complicated it is to build this setup, then well, here it is. And then for the last and final one, we have the bow with the void gauntlet. This is by far the highest damage build for PvE. This setup is great for dealing damage over time in big clumps, as most of our skills are built around AoE debuffs, stuns and interrupts. Also, as we are going to be using void gauntlet with CC skills, so we will need to be relatively close to the enemy, which means not making ourselves very squishy. So then we can go in, lock down a target, then burst him down, and then come back and survive another day. So if this sounds fun, then let's take a look at the setup. And for our weight, we want to use the light armor, as this will give us incredible amount of damage, while also giving us 2 dodge rolls, so we can quickly get in and out of fights. Then for the attributes we want to get 25 strength, then from 350 to 400 dexterity, then also 150 intelligence, and finally 100 constitution. As we are using light armor, so to get some defense, so we for sure want to get the 100 constitution, just in case to be safe. Next, as far as our skill tree goes, this is how it should look like for the bow. So I've built around AoV damage and just burst DPS, so we can quickly melt down large groups of enemies. While then on the other hand, the void gauntlet is structured around increasing your damage and locking down any target that crosses your path. Just remember that you almost have 0 defenses, so using the 2 dodge rolls and positioning yourself will be quite crucial for your success. And then for the last and final part, let's take a look at the base gear, buffs and consumables that pretty much all builds could use. And remember that this is just an example. So as far as armor goes, of course slowly but surely, you want to get to 725 gear score. And no matter if you choose medium or light armor, always use the opal gem on your gear. And if you can, then try to get these perks like the health, enchanted ward and the freedom. Then as far as your weapons go, I really like to go with diamond gem on my bows and just general ranged weapons. And then for all of your melee weapons, use the opal gem. And for weapon perks, some really good ones that you should try to get is keen, vicious and refreshing move. And last but not least for your rune, always go with the stalwart heart rune of the firestorm. And then for consumables, you should already know what to do. So use honing stones for damage increase, use attribute food for plus 40 attribute stats, and don't forget about healing and regen potions if you ever get in trouble. And that's about it. So if you enjoyed this video, click like, subscribe and comment. If you are interested in more content, then check out my channel, and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy, peace.